Hey, hi, hello. Welcome to Diana Emerson. Today we are listening to An Unexpected Killer.
It's a tragedy that University of Texas students will talk about for years to come.
Okay, Lulu.
Fails to show up for
Lulu.
her first day at a new job. Her parents, Jim and Sharon, worry something's happened
Lulu.
to her. They trace her steps back to the last place they believe she was, the Orange Street condo belonging to a friend of Jennifer's. What they find there is a parent's worst nightmare.
My name is Tina Thomas. I'm an audio journalist in Austin, Texas. I published a podcast in 2019 called The Orange Tree, which covered the murder of Jeffrey Cave and subsequent trials. West Campus is a series of neighborhoods that surround the University of Texas at Austin. I lived there for about 2 years, and during that time I heard a lot about the murder of Jennifer Cave.
August 16th, 2005. Jennifer Cave gets a call from the law firm where she interviewed.
She had just found out that day that she had gotten a job at a law office. In fact, she applied initially for a job at a law office that was a lower position than she ended up getting through the process of her interview because they liked her so much.
Jennifer calls friends and family to share the good news with them while she lays out an outfit for her first day at the new job. For Jennifer's mom and stepdad, this comes as a major relief. It sounds like a step in the right direction that Jennifer needs to get her life on track. Over the past few years, Jennifer's had trouble finding her footing. After high school, she does a semester at Texas State, then decides she wants to change, and ends up at Austin Community College. Jennifer grows up in the small town of Bishop, Texas, which has a population of roughly 3,000 people. Making the move to Austin, Texas feels like a long way from home. It's a big city with a thriving nightlife overflowing with college kids looking to party. It's a shock for this small town girl looking to find herself. Jim and Sharon see there's been a change in Jennifer. Sharon is especially concerned that Jennifer seems checked out from school. They fear that she's rudderless, not herself, and at risk of falling in with a bad crowd. Which is why Jim and Sharon are so relieved to hear Jennifer's great news about her new job.
And so that night, after calling all her family and her friends to let them know the good news, her friend Colton Pataniak, excited about the news, said, hey, we should go out and celebrate. Colton Pataniak was a McCombs business student at UT Austin at the time. He was also like a small town drug dealer. During his initial years of college, he started doing drugs at West Campus and partying a lot as it comes to the territory of selling drugs.
A one-time top student at his all-boys Catholic school in Little Rock, Arkansas, Colton no longer seems to care about his academic future. He abuses drugs and alcohol and parties a lot. Lately, Jennifer has put some distance between herself and Colton in an effort to get her life on track. But on the evening of August 16, 2005, Jennifer decides to accept Colton's invitation, and the two go out to celebrate.
In Austin, especially for young people, when you go out to celebrate, you go to the street. It's just a strip of bars, kind of like Bourbon Street in New Orleans. So that's where they decided to go that night. They went into Treasure Island and actually ran into a couple friends who were there for a birthday party. They remember seeing her with Colton, who was clearly very inebriated, where she was not.
It's getting late. Colton is intoxicated from a mix of vodka and Xanax. Jennifer will need to get home soon if she wants to be ready for her first day at her new job in the morning. The last time Colton and Jennifer are seen together by friends, Colton is upset because he can't find his phone, and Jennifer is trying to help him. The group of friends head to another bar and lose track of the pair at this point. The next morning, August 17th, 2005, Jennifer fails to show up for the first day at her new job.
Sharon gets a phone call from the law office where Jennifer is supposed to start. They inform her Jennifer didn't come in, and they ask if she knows where she is. Sharon is distraught and calls her daughter.
She wasn't picking up her phone, and she never really did that, especially like at this point in her life. She was being really responsible and getting back to people, so that seems like odd behavior for her mother and her family. So at the point that Sharon Cave realized that something was going on and her daughter wasn't picking up her phone.
The whole situation immediately sets off alarm bells for Sharon. She's worried something has happened to Jennifer. And since her daughter is on her phone plan, Sharon quickly gets a log of all the numbers Jennifer has recently called. Sharon speaks to a friend of Jennifer's named Michael, who claims he spoke to Jennifer the previous night. Jennifer tells him she has a friend who's having issues and agrees to hang out with him. Michael tells Sharon the friend's name is Colton. Sharon finds Colton's number in Jennifer's call log. She calls him, but he denies having seen her the previous night. Something doesn't add up.
Colton's been getting calls all afternoon from family and friends who know that he knew Jennifer the night before, and that's the last person that anyone saw Jennifer with, up until she didn't show up to her first day at her new job.
Sharon gets back in touch with Michael, who insists that Colton and Jennifer were together the previous night.
She keeps Michael on the phone while she tries Colton again on another phone.
Colton is irritated and tells Sharon he hasn't seen Jennifer and he doesn't know where she is.
Michael knows that Colton is lying. But why? Who is he hiding?
Jennifer Cave grows up in the small Texas town of Bishop and eventually moves to the big city of Austin, where she struggles with school and friends. Jennifer has problems finding her footing. Her parents are worried that she doesn't care about college and doesn't know what she wants in life. She's involved with some bad influences, like her friend Colton. Jennifer's parents see her turning her life around when she lands a job as a law secretary. But the night before her first shift, she agrees to go out with friend Colton. She never shows up for work the next day. Sharon has been calling around, trying to get hold of Jennifer without luck. According to her friends, she was last seen with Colton, but when Sharon calls Colton, he denies having seen her. Sharon and Jim decide to call 911 to report Jennifer missing.
Since Jennifer was technically an adult, there was no way for them to file a missing persons report yet. They had to wait the certain amount of time before they could do that, and an official missing persons report can be filed.
The next day, August 18th, Sharon and Jim still hadn't heard from Jennifer. They could wait no longer.
No one was really giving her any answers, especially not the person Jennifer was last seen with, Colton Tanya. She got really worried. Jim and Sharon decided to drive her to Austin and check in on her.
As Jim and Sharon make the 3-hour drive from Corpus Christi to Austin, they call 911 again.
Sharon speaks to the Austin Police Department and explains the situation.
While it's still too early to file a missing persons report, Sharon describes Jennifer's behavior as out of the ordinary, and the detective deems it worth following up on.
An officer is sent to check out Colton's place. His car is parked in its space, but there's no response at his suite. For now, there isn't much she can do. Later that day, Jim and Sharon arrive in Austin.
After not finding Jennifer or any trace of her where she would normally be, her apartment or elsewhere, they end up going to Colton's apartment. It's the first stop they make, actually, because Jennifer's roommate, Denise Winterbottom, said that she wasn't there at their apartment. So they head to the source of where they last know Jennifer to have been, with Colton.
They knock at Colton's condo. There's no answer. They try the police again and explain that Jennifer's car is here, but they still haven't been able to get in touch with her. They were told that there is no probable cause at this point to enter Colton's apartment. And for now, there's nothing more to do than wait.
They end up knocking on the door for several hours, looking for a sign of any movement inside, just anyone around, in and around that knows where Jennifer is, but they can't get any information still. And the door is locked. It seems to be deadbolted. They know that because they call someone to try to come unlock it for them. They call a locksmith, and they can't get in because it's deadbolted from the inside. So their next step is to just look for any way to try to get in there. They see a little crack in the outside window. And Jim and Sharon have the idea of maybe opening the window through that crack.
Jim goes and gets a piece of a pair of sunglasses from the car.
And he uses that to basically crack open the window and unlock it from the inside.
He instructs Sharon to wait outside. He knows he may be in danger.
He climbs inside, and once he's there, he's just trying to get through the darkness and the clutter. He describes walking through the small condominium, yelling out loud, trying to make his presence known. If there's anyone in there, to let them know that he is coming in, that he's Jennifer's stepfather, and that he's not trying to harm anyone. He's just trying to look for Jennifer. But no one's answering. It's dark and there's no sign of movement. And that's when she starts to smell something coming from the bathroom that she doesn't really know his way around this condominium, but he's drawn to the bathroom because of the smell.
What Jim discovers inside Colton's apartment shakes him to his core. He's barely able to convey to Sharon that there is a dead body inside, and he thinks it may be Jennifer.
Austin 911, do you need someone to care or EMS? Please, where are you? Sorry. That's the emergency. It's an Orange Tree apartment. Sir, this is 911. We have a lot of help on the way. I just need to be able to confirm if she is conscious and breathing.
No, I think she's dead.
Okay, but she is past. Do you believe she's past doing CPR?
I do, and I also believe that she's got a sign to take here, but I don't want to confirm.
With police on the way, Sharon and Jim may finally be able to answer the question of what happened to Jennifer. But new questions begin to form. What happened to Colton, and where is he? An officer arrives at the condo to discover a grisly crime scene. He finds the body of a young woman in the bathtub. It is partially dismembered, missing both the head and the hands. Officer Barberia notices a bloody hacksaw. He sees a plastic garbage bag near the tub, and given the shape of it, he knows what's inside. Who is capable of doing something like this, and why?
While the primary crime scene is located in the bathroom, investigators discovered what are likely bloodstains in several other areas of the condo. They also discovered a likely murder weapon, a 9mm handgun, as well as 2 shell casings. Whoever did this didn't make much of an attempt to clean up afterwards. Nevertheless, at this point in the investigation, there's many more questions than answers, so they must be thorough in cataloging the evidence.
Given that Colton's condo is so close to campus, students are rattled by the fact that a murder has occurred so close to home. But for now, details of the grisly crime are withheld. The body is identified as Jennifer Cave. The cause of death is from a 9mm bullet that passes through Jennifer's arm and lodges in her aorta, stopping her heart and causing near instant death. But a second bullet is fired.
It's difficult to describe and impossible to comprehend, but a second bullet from the same gun was discovered in the severed head of Jennifer Cave. The bullet entered the area of the stem of her neck and lodged in her skull, indicating that it was fired after she was already dead. Whatever the reason for doing this, it may present investigators with a glimpse into the psyche of her killer. Detectives are intentionally withholding the details of the crime from the press. They fear that if the public knew, imposters would come forward and claim responsibility. Anytime you have a murder like this, it tends to draw out some very depraved individuals, attention seekers, all who want to take credit for it.
Detective David Fugit is assigned to the case. His main priority right now is tracking down Colton for questioning.
One of the detectives who was really following this, who was in charge of tracking down Colton, actually had kind of an easy time pinpointing him at the time because Colton never turned his cell phone on.
The cell phone trace shows that Colton is in Piedras Negras, Mexico, but pings from cell phone towers aren't useful in pinpointing someone's exact location. If he has any hope of extraditing Colton and getting to the bottom of what happened to Jennifer Cave, he'll need to coordinate with local authorities.
Jennifer Cave is drawn to the troubled, self-destructive persona of her friend Colton. Jennifer's stepfather, Jim, describes this as the, quote, stray dog theory, a pull to help the wayward, the down and out. But since high school, Jennifer herself has been without much in the way of purpose or direction. But Jennifer seems about to turn her life around with a full-time job at a law office where she's excited to start work. Only Jennifer never shows up to work. And in their search to find their daughter, Jim and Sharon are led back to Colton's Orange Tree condo, where they find Jennifer's body in the bathtub. Now detectives are desperate to speak to Colton and get to the bottom of what happened. But they'll need to find him first.
While detectives are busy trying to track down Colton, they get a call from the parents of Laura Hall. Laura's parents have received some cryptic emails from their daughter saying that she's gone to Mexico and she doesn't plan on coming back. Investigators' lone fugitive theory is about to go out the window. Colton Pitoniak is in Mexico. He's not alone.
Laura Hall was a student at UT as well. By all accounts, including her own, she had a huge crush on Colton. She liked him a lot, and she was hoping to pursue a romantic relationship, something more serious than he had in mind at the time.
Well, he's not yet sure how she's involved. Fugit is now looking for Laura Hall and her green Cadillac.
Footage is captured of Laura and Colton crossing the border. At the checkpoint where they cross into Mexico, you see footage of Laura and Colton handing over their IDs to officials. The drive is pretty long, but Laura seems to have driven the whole way when Colton in the passenger seat was still trying to stay as drunk as possible and still taking a lot of Xanax.
Detective Fugit now has concrete proof that Laura Hall is involved and that she and Colton have fled to Mexico.
Detectives already have a mountain of questions for Colton, but more questions are raised as to how and why Laura Hall is involved and what role, if any, did she play in Jennifer Cave's murder.
Meanwhile, nearly 4 hours away, Colton and Laura Hall are holed up at a hotel in the Mexican city of Piedras Negras.
So after making their way into Mexico, Colton and Laura are hiding out at a hotel, and it's at that time they're really paranoid. Colton is still drinking and doing a lot of drugs. They end up befriending the hotel manager, Pedro Fernandez. He invited Colton over actually to watch mixed martial arts on his television.
Colton and Laura accept Pedro's invitation to watch a fight in his place. Colton is very inebriated, but still paranoid.
When this happens is kind of when things begin to unravel. When he notices that Laura and Colton are displaying kind of odd behavior, he gets a little suspicious.
Colton and Laura openly ask the hotel manager about extradition laws, about selling Laura's car, and suggest they can't go back to the U.S. Naturally, that sets off a lot of red flags.
And during the time when Laura and Colton are over at his place, kind of partying, watching mixed martial arts with Pedro, is when that infamous photo is taken of Laura and Colton by Pedro's child's playpen, smiling ear to ear, holding a stuffed animal. It's described that, Colton is really paranoid, very somber, and stressed out, but this photo tells a completely different story of how they were feeling at the time.
Detective Fugit has yet to learn Laura's motive for hating Colton, but given the high media profile of this case, he is eager to get the two in custody.
Yes, the media was really all over this case, and particularly the story about Colton and Laura going to Mexico and being in hiding for a few days. That's when the media scrutiny was very high.
The hotel manager continues to be suspicious of the odd American couple he's just had over to watch the fight. So he speaks to a friend in the Border Patrol and learns of a murder that recently happened in Austin.
He reaches out to Detective Fugit and sends him the photo of Colton and Laura, as well as the location of the hotel they are staying at.
Thanks to the hotel manager, detectives are able to narrow their search and locate Laura and Colton. They get in touch with Mexican law enforcement, who are eager to cooperate with U.S. authorities.
On August 23rd, 2005, 5 days after the murder of Jennifer Cave, the pair of fugitives are arrested in their hotel room by Mexican authorities.
Laura and Colton are separated and interrogated, but because they only have an arrest warrant for Colton, they let Laura go. Investigators present Colton with what they know about the case. There's a mountain of evidence against Colton, so they're hopeful that he'll cooperate. But Colton is afraid to talk without his lawyer.
Are you telling me that you don't want to talk to me and you want an attorney? Either you want to talk to us today, and obviously there's no attorney present. Okay. All right, then we can't talk to you, and we'll just go with the information that we have.
Fugit must terminate the interview. He'll have to wait a little longer to find out what happened to Jennifer that fateful night. Detective Fugit learns his prime suspect in Jennifer Cave's murder, Colton Petoniak, has fled to Mexico with friend Laura Hall. Colton and Laura are arrested in their hotel room in Mexico 5 days after Jennifer Cave's murder. Laura is released and Colton is held. He refuses to speak to police without his attorney. Assistant District Attorneys Bill Bishop and Stephanie McFarland are assigned to Jennifer's case. The main facts of their case are simple. Jennifer was found in Colton's apartment.
The gun that killed her belonged to Colton. His fingerprints are all over the weapon. Add this to the fact that he fled to Mexico, and the case seems pretty cut and dry. But the DA has learned that Colton's parents have hired legendary defense attorney Roy Mitton, and they wonder what sort of defense he could possibly be mounting. But they're ready for a fight.
Roy Mitton is known for taking on hard cases, but he's also a pragmatist. He and his partner, Sam Bassett, must carefully comb the details of the case, making educated guesses at how the state will come after their client, and ultimately form a defense that might reasonably stand up in court.
My name's Sam Bassett. I've been practicing law in Austin, Texas for 32 years. I specialize in criminal defense, and I represented Colton Petoniak at the time of his trial. This case was certainly the most high-profile case I've been involved in. There was quite a bit of publicity in Austin, in the Austin area, and throughout the state, and perhaps nation.
One of their big hurdles is that Colton's substance abuse has created massive gaps in his memory. And without witnesses, the case will eventually come down to the physical evidence, mainly the handgun that is fired, causing Jennifer's death.
I think that the impact on the community and the UT community was significant. Colton was not the type of person that would usually be accused of committing some sort of crime like this. He was a good student. He had been in a fraternity, and a lot of people were scratching their heads in the UT community about what had happened, why it had happened.
With questions still lingering on all sides of this case, the day of Colton's trial arrives. Jennifer's family and the community at large are hopeful that this trial will finally provide answers for what happened to Jennifer Cave and why.
The judge makes the surprising decision to allow Court TV Network to televise the proceedings. This very public case will now be available in real time to a shocked and curious public audience.
In this case, the Court TV camera was set up literally in the middle of the gallery. It was a very large camera. Under the rules, the jurors couldn't be photographed, and witnesses who did not want to be photographed were excluded. But it was a very dominating influence in the courtroom, so it was a very significant part of what was going on inside the courtroom.
In the public eye, Colton is already guilty. But the question that people want answered is why he did it, and why he dismembered Jennifer's body the way he did. For the state, however, the burden of proof lies only in demonstrating that Colton did in fact murder Jennifer. The question of why he did it is not necessary to answer.
Colton's lawyers offer a rather surprising plea. They are not going to contest that Colton killed Jennifer, but they are asking that the charge of involuntary manslaughter be considered in this case.
In the opening statement, we addressed our theory of the case at that time. And the theory was that because of the manner in which Jennifer was shot, under the arm on the side, and the kind of random nature of the bullet going across her body and actually piercing her aorta, which was a very long shot type of situation, combined with everything we had learned from witnesses, all that information we compiled and had to come up with a strategy to defend him against the charge of murder.
In Colton's trial, he came out initially and, due to the advice of his lawyers, said, I did this, I did kill Jennifer, but it was unintentional.
Based on the information we had, we concluded that the theory of the accident fueled by intoxication was the most credible theory that we could go on in defending Colton.
The state also brings up that this wasn't the first time a gun went off in Colton's apartment. He was known for playing around with guns a lot because he was selling drugs and he wanted to have this hardcore image of him as a gangster. So bringing up a specific instance of him playing with a gun and accidentally firing and shooting his dishwasher.
But ultimately, the judge decides against allowing the jury the charge of a lesser offense.
He denied our request, and I think this jury would have struggled if they had the option of manslaughter versus murder.
The trial doesn't last long. Colton's defense is limited in its options, as Colton has admitted to killing Jennifer. Their only hope is to paint a picture of a man who was not aware of what he was doing, and hope for leniency in the sentencing.
Essentially, Colton's lawyers were just trying to get him a lighter sentence. They were trying to get him some sympathy from the jury by showcasing that he didn't remember any of that night, that he was so barred out on Xanax, had taken so many pills and drank so much that whole day that there's no possible way he could have intentionally killed this friend that he initially set out to celebrate her success with.
Minton allows Colton to testify in his own trial, a rarity for someone accused of murder. Minton doesn't go easy on his client. His tactic is to show that there are serious gaps in Colton's memory, and that Colton likely misfired the gun that killed Jennifer by accident.
I think the most compelling witness was Colton Pataniak, and I think he was being truthful. I don't think he remembered what happened. And I know that that's a lot of people have criticized him and us for testifying to that. I think he was telling the truth. They also tried to show that the gun didn't have an unusually hair trigger type of pressure point. It is something that we had our own ballistics expert look at to see what the pull ratio was on the gun to determine it. For instance, if that would have been consistent with our theory of an accident. It wasn't ruled out by ballistics that it could have been an accident, but it was also pretty solid evidence that the gun didn't have an unusually light pressure trigger.
For Colton's attorneys, their only real hope is to try to convince jurors that Colton shot Jennifer by accident, and that the ensuing dismemberment was the suggestion of Laura Hall.
Colton is seen at a hardware store on August 17, 2005 at approximately 2:34 p.m. He has with him a shopping list. He purchases a hacksaw and some cleaning supplies. His defense alleges that he was still intoxicated at the time and that Laura Hall came up with the shopping list and the plan to cut up Jennifer's body.
Minton suggests that Colton is so messed up on prescription drugs and alcohol that he can't think for himself, and that Laura, a young woman completely in love and obsessed with him, did all the decision-making, including the decision to flee to Mexico. But for those hoping to hear Laura's side of the story, they are left in the dark.
Laura Hall showed up because we subpoenaed her to the courtroom. And then after that, she asserted her Fifth Amendment privilege and did not testify.
The jury reviews the facts of the case and comes to a unanimous decision.
Colton ends up being charged with murder, which is a 55-year sentence in his case.
At the back of the courtroom sits Colton's accomplice, Laura Hall, whose own road to justice is about to be paved. On August 17, 2005, Jennifer Cave is brutally murdered at the Orange Tree Condos in Austin, Texas. And the primary suspect, Colton Pataniak, flees to Mexico with friend Laura Hall. Colton is tried for Jennifer's murder and found guilty. He is sentenced to 55 years in prison. But Laura Hall's ordeal is just beginning. Laura Hall is brought in on charges of harboring a fugitive and tampering with evidence.
What was most disturbing was there was medical examiner evidence that after the head had been decapitated from the body, that a bullet had been shot up through the neck, and the bullet was lodged in the top of the skull. So there was a post-mortem shooting of the head of Jennifer Cave's body. That was shocking to the medical examiner, and I think it was shocking to everybody involved in the case. How could somebody do something like that? It was certainly our theory that that was done by Laura.
Officer Mark Gilchrist wants to give Laura the opportunity to explain herself. But when it appears she may not be willing to cooperate, he informs her that she's under arrest.
You don't want to talk to me about your attorney. That's what you're telling me.
I mean, unless, I don't know. If you're saying I might be in some kind of trouble.
Read that.
Oh my God.
Laura Ashley Hall, you're under arrest. For delirium apprehension.
Delirium apprehension?
Yes, ma'am. Now, you understand how serious this is?
Oh my God. What's going to happen?
You're going to go to jail.
What did I?
You got to tell the truth.
Laura decides to waive her right to an attorney and cooperate with detectives. But her story of what happens and her involvement in it changes wildly. At one point, she claims Colton tells her he's attacked.
He said that 3 people came into his apartment. One of them was dead. They had a gun. He said that, well, he didn't say one of them was dead, but he said, like, one of them was, one of them was hurt, right? He said he left the door unlocked and they came in shooting at him.
But there's no evidence to back this claim. and Laura admits this was unlikely. Laura changes her testimony from she felt scared and threatened by Colton to she was in love with him and didn't believe he committed the crime.
I just couldn't fathom it. And I wanted to be able to help him in any way I could.
Detectives are left without a clear picture of Laura's involvement. One thing, however, is clear. Laura's DNA is found throughout the condo, including on the murder weapon from the 9mm handgun that killed Jennifer Cave. The question that most people hope will be answered through Laura's trial was who mutilated the body and why. But this question is never answered. During Colton's trial, he claims he doesn't remember what happened, and Laura claims she had nothing to do with it, even though her DNA can be found on several pieces of evidence.
Laura ends up being charged and sentenced to 5 years for hindering apprehension and tampering with evidence. That's simply because it was the maximum that she could really get for those two things that really were the only things that they could use to charge her with.
While in prison, Laura appeals her case.
While Laura was in prison serving the first part of her initial sentence, she actually spent a lot of that time talking to her friends and family from jail phones. And all those phone calls get recorded. And so, lawyers will tell you, hey, if they're still going to take you to trial, don't say anything that maybe will be inflammatory or can be used against you.
But that's what mom sounded like a little more on it.
Exactly, because I have a daughter and you're not dead. She doesn't have a daughter.
Because she's jealous. Maybe she's going to establish that everybody knows, like, I'm going to be okay because I'm going home in mid-March, like, it's official.
Well,
Tell me you're not going to piss on my good fortune.
Well, it's probably going to happen that way, Laura.
I'll kill you.
Well, I hope you don't.
Laura said a lot of things that were pretty damning to her friends and family, and a lot of that was used in her second trial.
Did that interview with that girl's mother again? What's her name?
She's going down. She's going down. One way or another. She's going down.
It was something that kind of shocked the whole courtroom, was hearing Laura's jail phone calls. It was definitely something that added to the picture that the state was trying to paint of Laura being someone that would be able to do something that was this heinous. As a result, Laura's sentence was doubled from 5 to 10 years.
What right do they have to make these decisions? They're ruining my life. What right do they have to do this? Our Constitution gives them that right now. No, I can't believe that. This is not my answer.
Over the years, several individuals come forward and sign affidavits stating Laura claims that she killed Jennifer. One of them is Laura's cellmate.
It's been shown in all of the actual innocence cases we've seen in the last 10 or 20 years that jailhouse informants are some of the most unreliable witnesses, both for the prosecution and for the defense. So if you're basing your defense solely on jailhouse informants, you're kind of grasping. And that was one of our concerns about using the single person from the jail that we had interviewed as a defense to Colton by pointing the finger at Laura.
Colton's appeals never amount to anything, and Colton is still serving his 55-year sentence. They do, however, continue to cast a shadow over Laura's life. Laura was released on March 15, 2018, after having served her sentence. The one good thing to come from the case is Sharon's work in getting the Jennifer Cave Act passed in 2007 by Governor Rick Perry.
Specifically because of Laura's trials, the creation of the Jennifer Cave Act came about. It was something that was pushed by Sharon Cave and the Cave family as a whole. It has two parts to it. The first part being specifically about the sentencing that Laura had, and it changed it so that no longer, if there's a case like this that happened again, we wouldn't have to use those grave digger laws to sentence someone for something like this again. And the second part was actually pertaining to the jury. Sharon Cave was really affected by a lot of the jury members' reactions to the exhibits that were shown at trial and the details that they were forced to hear. And so what it did was it offered counseling for jury members that take part in Texas trials, which is a huge deal because prior to this case, that was not something that was mandatory for Texas to offer jury members. Overall, I think that it just really showcases that family's resilience and their ability to take the situation and actually give back to their community. Even like a moment that is really heartbreaking and distressing to them, they found a way to make a difference.
An Olympic athlete and beloved track coach searches his yard for an intruder.
I didn't see it, but they were shot. You heard what? They were shot.
Police find him shot to death in his own yard.
A burglar was in the backyard. You don't know what to think. You're just like, okay, what is going on? What's happening here?
Just as important as who shot Dave Lowe is why they shot him 6 times.
Based on the way the news description was, I knew right away who I thought would have done it. Oxnard, California, nestled on the Pacific Coast Highway between Los Angeles and Santa Barbara. This city of 200,000 is known for its strawberry fields, ocean living, and a harbor that serves at the closest point to Channel Islands National Park. The city of Oxnard is in Ventura County. It wasn't the most opulent neighborhood in the world, but it was a place where you could raise a family, be comfortable, know your neighbors.
It's not a huge place, so you pretty much knew everybody there. My dad, he taught at Wainini High School for, 30 plus years, and then my brother taught there also. That's pretty much Oxnard. Yeah.
There are very nice parts of Oxnard where there's beautiful housing on the beach, near the beach, on like a Riverwalk type area. And there's some really rough parts of Oxnard with tenement housing, with people living very close together, with a lot of crime. It's almost midnight on August 27, 2009. In a middle-class Oxnard neighborhood, Jane Loud hears a noise coming from outside the house. She asks her husband, Dave, to go outside and see what's going on. What happens next is recorded in a frantic 911 call from Jane.
911 emergency, this is Gayla. How are you reporting? Something was in our backyard. All right, what's the person look like that was in your backyard? I didn't see it, but they were shot. You heard what? They were shot. You heard shots being fired? Yeah. My husband went outside. I want you guys to stay inside the house. Is everyone in your house? The Canfor in your house?
Dave Loud is already outside and in the line of fire.
Oh my gosh, everybody knew Dave. I always say, like, ever since I was a little kid, he's my Superman. He was very well liked by classmates and teachers and just counselors and people at church. You know, he was just very well spoken, really considerate.
Dave Loud grows up in Oxnard, the son of a biology teacher who also coaches athletics. Dave was an athlete. He was driven by a very demanding father to be the highest he could be in track and field.
We kind of come through a coaching kind of, background. So
The coaching goes with the sport thing. And Dave was a very, very good athlete. He was going to go someplace or do something at university level. Jane and Dave Loud knew each other from high school. I think they were homecoming queen and king at their high school. They were like high school sweethearts. They got along very, very well. They always seemed to just enjoy each other's company.
As Dave rises through the ranks of competitive shot put, he and Jane become high school sweethearts.
Jane came from a pretty well-off farm family. The Lawbacher family is pretty prominent in Ventura County. They've been farming our county for years. They are one of the five, I would say, most well-known agricultural families in our area. They were ranchers. They had a big ranch. You could go out to the ranch, and even I did when I was a kid. I learned how to shoot out there. You could shoot like a .22 or whatever. You could shoot bottles or whatever.
After getting a scholarship at UCLA, Dave wins the NCAA shot put title and sets his sights on the Olympics. All the while, Jane is by his side. They marry in December 1980, and Dave sets his sights on the 1984 Olympics in Los Angeles.
And he won a bronze medal in those Olympics. It was a proud moment for me because I was like, oh my gosh, this guy just won a bronze medal. Like, this is incredible. And he was actually a little bit disappointed because he wants to win. He's a winner. I know he was frustrated with only winning the bronze. He thought he could have done better then, but the city of Oxnard was very proud of him. My friend Steve Oxnard hosted a big parade for him when he returned. People came out to shake his hand and stuff like that. I remember hugging him and saying, I'm so proud of you, dude. You did it. He goes, I didn't really do it. I got third. I'm like, you won a bronze medal in the Olympics. You are a winner. His career faded after the Olympics, and his body failed him.
While training to be a firefighter, Dave seriously injures both knees. He fails to make the 1988 U.S. Olympic team. Suddenly, his career as an athlete is over.
He just wasn't the same, you know what I mean? He did all the rehab, and he was getting older too. So, trying to rehab both knees at the same time. He kind of knew he was done. So after that, he's like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to be a teacher. He was a biology teacher like my dad, teaching and coaching. Then he became the AD at Wainimi High School. And I've had a lot of kids come to me and tell me, hey, I had your brother for a teacher. Or, hey, I had your brother for a coach. Oh, man, he was the best.
In 1999, Dave and Jane Loud adopt a baby boy from South Korea. Their 10-year-old son sleeps in his room as Jane makes a terrified call to 911.
Somebody shot me here. I don't know. Like 1, 2, a bunch? I don't know. What? Oh my God. Jane, take a breath. Walk up. Your husband is outside. Can you call to him? Tell him to come in. He's on the side. Jane, stay with me. I have officers there. There are 2 officers there. There are 1 to stay inside the house.
2 officers arrived at the house. They're looking for an intruder in the backyard. They're young officers. You can imagine how scary that would be if you thought there was a potential gunman. It's pitch black back on that side yard. There's no lighting.
Police discover Dave's body on the ground with blood pooling around his face.
They find Dave dead, lying by the barbecue.
He's face down with his arm tucked underneath him. It's possible that Dave is still holding the gun.
Police initially believe this might be a self-inflicted gunshot wound, but as more police arrive, they discover a gunshot wound in Dave's back.
You can't shoot yourself in the back. Police now know that Dave Loud was shot more than once, and that somebody else shot him.
Jane was interviewed at the scene by a patrol officer, by a detective, and brought to Oxnard PD. Interviewed for almost an hour and a half by another detective who, at the time, was the detective of the case.
I looked at the bed, and he got up and said he thought he heard me. Said there's something going on in the bedroom. And then he said, put the dogs, keep the dogs, keep the dogs in the room.
If there was somebody that I cared, would you those dogs in?
Maybe. He started to go off my trash can for him.
Jane tells police she hears a man's voice and then 3 shots.
And then I heard some shots, so I shut the door and I ran.
What the F? That's what Jane hears outside. And she calls 911 after the gunshots. She's in shock when police arrive.
We were notified, I believe it was the next morning, pretty early, like 5-ish, something like that.
This is Detective Sanchez with Oxnard Police Department. I'm sorry to be calling you this early, and unfortunately the reason I'm calling is there was an incident that occurred at David's house. And I'm sorry to say that he's passed.
Oh.
At this point, it's still under investigation, but it appears that he was shot.
So now you start processing in your head, like, how could this happen? And, what's going on? We went to the house, and then they had all of the tape and everything all out. Cops were out and whatnot. And they proceeded to tell us what happened about the burglar. They didn't tell us too many details at the time. They seemed to be very, just kind of holding things back.
When the officers arrived on the scene, they found the victim on the ground with multiple gunshot wounds as well as pooling around his head. No casings or weapon were recovered on the scene initially. They also found bullet strikes or ricochets on both the wall and the ground surrounding the victim. And additionally, they found hair, blood, and tissue adhering to trash cans around near where the victim was located.
Look, if Dave Loud found someone creeping around in his yard, would he have been shot multiple times in the head and then once in the back? Police know there's more to this story. Just as important as who shot Dave Loud is why they shot him 6 times. Jane said she closed the door and then heard a man's voice and then shots.
That's what it cut you. It's my dad.
It's going to take a skilled investigator to get at the truth.
2009, Oxnard, California, north of Los Angeles. Dave Lout, Olympic shot putter and beloved high school teacher, goes outside to investigate the noise.
Police find him face down and in full blood, shot multiple times, including once in the back. Would a prowler lurking around the yard do that?
A community is shocked by the murder of its Olympic hero. The students and staff at Dave's high school come to a memorial to share their shock and grief at his death.
I've never seen a funeral like that, ever. There was a gymnasium at the high school, and there were so many people there. There was people that I haven't seen in years that came to Dave's funeral. And, of course, they were, very remorseful and sad. And what was being said at that time was that he was, killed by a prowler. One of the people that went up there to talk about it talked about how, it's tragedy in these days that, you can't even go in your backyard to go throw the trash away, and then you have a prowler in your backyard who shoots and kills you.
Jane and her family don't attend the memorials for Dave.
She wasn't at the funeral, and nobody from her family was at the funeral. That was like, well, what's going on?
Fearful that Dave's violent murder is by an unseen stranger who is still at large, the community holds a candlelight vigil.
Once again, Jane Lout doesn't come out to the vigil, and the stress must be overwhelming for her. The police are wondering if he really reached the hero.
As police interview Jane Lout, they notice changes in her story.
Earlier in the 911 call, Jane said she closed the door, and then heard a man's voice, and then shots.
Okay, did you shut the door and then hear the shots, or did you hear the shots and then shut the door? What was it down to? What did they do when they heard the gunshots? Did you hear them barking at all?
Jane's description of the dog's reaction is an interesting detail. It's common knowledge that dogs have exceptional hearing.
Depending on the particular dog and how familiar it is with sharp, loud noises, it will usually bark or maybe even howl. If the noise was loud enough and close enough, the dog might have even found a place to hide.
Police look for clarification on the gunshots Jane heard.
You've been around guns, you've been around gunfire. What does it sound like?
It sounds like a pop. Like quick.
How many pops did you hear?
3.
Were they describing to me how fast they were? It wasn't pop, hesitation, pop, and hesitation, pop. It was 1, 2, 3.
I mean, not. You know.
Jane says she hears 3 rapid-fire shots, and that might suggest that a semi-automatic or an automatic weapon was used.
So initially on the scene, no casings were located around the body, so that's typically indicative of either a revolver being used or someone picking up the casings. On the scene, they recovered bullets, and they were able to determine that they were 22 caliber class.
The .22 caliber class of ammunition is easily the most common ammunition in the world.
A lot of times with the smaller caliber bullets, because they're so small and light, they cause a lot of damage in the body because they ricochet around a lot.
As part of their investigation, police use a gunshot residue kit to gather evidence.
So when a firearm is discharged, these particles can tell you if a person recently fired a weapon, recently handled a weapon, or if they were in close contact to a weapon when it was discharged.
Police are getting ready to test Jane for gunshot residue when she disappears.
She's in the bathroom washing her hands, and before the detective can stop her, she wipes her hands on a towel. This is very unusual behavior.
Gunshot residue is highly transient, so it's easily removed by rubbing the hands or washing them, which could skew the results of the test.
But police do discover several rounds of unfired .22 caliber ammunition in the residence.
The unfired bullets that were found at the scene ultimately will be of little use as far as evidence goes, but the gunshot residue that was found will ultimately prove to be much more useful.
Then, police make a startling discovery.
When searching the house, there were numerous weapons recovered, including a .22 caliber revolver that was found hidden in a grandfather clock.
That's not something you would expect to see every day.
It's typical of a cowboy-style gun that you may see in the movies.
It was my dad's gun that he had given Jane. Yeah, I don't know if it was a Christmas present. That's where the gun came from. It was from my dad.
And so that was the main suspect weapon that was compared.
A prowler lurking around a yard isn't going to take Dave's gun and shoot him with it, and then go into Dave's house and hide that gun in a grandfather.
Do you know where all the guns are in your house?
I think most of them, I think they're all in the bedroom. And then he did have one, but I don't think on the shelf.
Dave Love's loving wife Jane, the homecoming queen, becomes the prime suspect in his murder. Does she pull the trigger?
You know how to shoot? So it sounds like you have a gun safe. It sounds like you keep the guns locked up. You're not going to have something in your house you can use it. Especially like that, right?
No.
One thing is for sure, investigators have a long way to go to solve this murder.
Oxnard, California. Olympic shot putter Dave Love investigates a noise in his yard.
My shop is here. I don't know. Like 1, 2, a bunch? I don't know.
The story to the police was that they heard somebody outside and that they heard an intruder
Dave went outside. She heard gunshots. She called 911. Police find Dave's body, shot in the head and back.
Jane does wash her hands and ultimately may have washed away any gunshot residue, making the test worthless. But on the night of the murder, they do find clothing that does come back with residue on it.
So when a firearm is discharged, primer residues, vaporized lead, and burned and unburned gunpowder are expelled from the barrel of the firearm. These particles can tell you if a person recently fired a weapon, recently handled a weapon, or if they were in close contact to a weapon when it was discharged.
Now, Dave's wife, Jane, has become the prime suspect.
There was a point where they said, we think that she did this. And it's like you're going, oh my gosh. So that kind of hits you too, like, wow. So now you start processing in your head, like, how could this happen? And, you know, what's going on?
They find a gun hidden away in the grandfather closet. If it is the murder weapon, there's only one person that could have hidden it there, and she's currently talking to police.
This is a very, very, very serious situation here. And we have other detectives at your house right now. Sat here and I listen to your story. And I gotta say, it doesn't match up with what's out there. The sequence of events that you gave us, compared with the evidence that's there, don't really add up. Looking at it objectively, there are flags that come up that don't match and don't make sense.
Despite Jane's obvious exasperation with the questioning, police continue to press her for more information.
Well, there are some things we don't know. I asked you about your relationship. I'm asking you these questions for a reason. Is it abusive? Physically? Mentally?
I don't get what you're getting at. I don't know what you want. All I want to do is get the hell out of here and go home.
You didn't get upset about anything until right now.
You don't know me.
I don't. And I told you from the very
You
beginning.
know nothing about me. You don't know how I take things. You know nothing.
Don't be afraid to show emotions. Don't be afraid
I'm
to...
not afraid to show my emotions, but I'm trying to be strong.
Most of us can imagine what it would be like to be accused of something we didn't do. We'd feel shocked. We'd feel surprised. We really didn't do it. If you were continually accused, you might even start to get angry. The innocent person's biggest fear is not being believed. The guilty, however, have a different fear, the fear of being caught. Whether you're afraid of being disbelieved or you're afraid of being caught, the behavioral responses may be the same. They're both fear. It's going to take a skilled investigator to get at the truth.
What I'm saying is that you sounded pretty stoic and calm until I told you that what you're telling me and what we have are not matching up. If you truly didn't do it, then I don't understand why you get so upset now. If I was in your shoes, I'm sure you didn't do it. You go find the guy that killed my husband. You never asked me that. You never asked me once.
Investigators are finally able to get closer to the truth.
Was it polygraph?
Yes, I sure want to go home.
No, I'm asking, do you want to take a polygraph test?
Do you want to do it now?
No. Do you want to take one?
I'll do it. I want to see my son. I can't believe.
Well, you don't just get to do what you want to do in a murder investigation. Hire that right now. Just to find out who killed your husband. Okay? To look at everything objectively. We need to find out who killed your husband. We have to be thorough. Okay? And the best way, I think, for us to do that is you take a polygraph, you're here now, you're done, we move past you, we go to the next thing.
The story kept jumping and changing. One kind of didn't pan out, and another one would come out. She'd say, okay, this happened, and then that happened, and then it was an accident.
While Jane now admits that she shot Dave, she says Dave threatens to shoot their son, so she wrestles the gun away from him. The ballistics investigation suggests that this is more than just an accidental discharge of a firearm.
The victim had 6 gunshot wounds to the body. One of them was a graze wound to the left parietal scalp. The victim also had 2 gunshot wounds to the right side of the face, one to the right cheek near the eye, and one below towards the middle part of the cheek. Both of these projectile paths exited the left side of the victim's face. The victim also had a projectile wound to the right upper back. The victim's incapacitating wound entered the right parietal scalp and was recovered from the left front brain.
He's twice as big as she is, and he's shot many times in the head and back. This story still doesn't make any sense.
With police becoming increasingly suspicious of her, Jane meets with her attorney.
I said to her, Jane, the only plausible explanation for what happened last night is that you shot him. I just need to know the why. It's not who done it. I just need to know the why. And then she broke down and told me what happened.
Jane says that Dave abuses her throughout their marriage, and as a battered spouse, she has to defend herself.
Jane said Jane and Dave's relationship was one of him dominating her. The way he perceived his life was that sheer job was to take care of him in every way possible. That's how Dave viewed her, and that's how, unfortunately, Jane at that time viewed herself.
But not everyone believes her claim of abuse.
We never saw any inkling of abuse at all. We'd spend birthdays and Christmases and things like that. No problems. You'd never see anything. She would never say anything.
The one thing Jane said, she lived in a very volatile relationship where she was physically, mentally, and sexually abused repeatedly over 29 years. So there was no happiness in that marriage. It was a violent, volatile relationship.
At this point, with the story still changing, police know they have to keep digging.
Jane and her attorney offer police a new version of events.
He comes out and he starts yelling at her, telling her that she does nothing for him, that she's worthless, and he has a gun, and he's waving the gun around. He pushes her around, and he tells her that he's going to kill her and their son. When Jane tells the story to me initially, she's shaking, talking about it. She guides him outside to get him as far away from her son as possible. As they're backing up, Dave stumbles. Jane hits him like a linebacker, kicks him in the knee and tackles him down. And she gets the gun. And when she gets the gun, she decides that she's just going to keep shooting until he stops. They struggle. He grabs her by the arm and squeezes her arm, and she shoots him.
It's another change in the story, and it's not the only possibility. Maybe she's not reacting to what Dave did in that moment, but she's rather executing a plan.
Dave's family, including Don Lout's wife, Rebecca, suggests that there is no abuse.
I also remember a very crucial conversation that I had with her. And I remember early on I told you that I had asked her, kind of hinted if Dave ever hit her.
Yeah.
And I remember the conversation. And I asked her, do you think he would ever hit you? And she said, I don't think so. I mean, I can hear it in my head so clear now. But she said she didn't think so. If I truly felt like she did this in self-defense, or if it was really that bad, I mean, there's just no way, not anything ever, did I ever think that she was in fear for her life, ever. And if she says that she was, she's lying. She is straight out lying.
If self-defense isn't the motive, then what really happened, and why?
It was just horrible. She pretty much went out to go take this trash out, and she pretty much just kind of had a flashlight and just started bang, 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 bang.
If Jane Lout had intent, then it's murder. If the jury believes that she was acting in self-defense, then she goes free.
She goes back in the house. She's freaked out. She still thinks Dave's coming back. She doesn't think he's dead. She thinks he's coming back. So she hides the gun, and she checks on her son. She comes back out and calls 911.
Both sides agree that Jane shot Dave, and that she called 911, and that she hid the gun. But they don't agree on why she did it.
Can law enforcement use what they know about the gun itself to uncover the truth of what happens?
This is a single action revolver, which means that the hammer of the weapon has to be cocked before the trigger can be pulled. So each time the hammer needs to be pulled back, and then the trigger needs to be pulled to make a round discharge.
How many pops did you get?
3.
Were they describing to me how fast they were? It wasn't pop, hesitation, pop, and hesitation, pop. It was 1, 2, 3.
I think.
Okay.
Police know that this revolver requires time to cock back the hammer and pull the trigger. Every time the person firing this gun has to pull back that hammer and pull the trigger, and then pull the hammer back and pull the trigger again, they have time to think about what they're doing.
Jane had experience with the gun because Dave had taken her shooting with that gun multiple times. It was a gun that she was familiar with, and she knew how to fire.
One method for firing bullets rapidly with a revolver is a technique called fanning.
Jamming is a technique that some shooters use to discharge a single action revolver and to discharge it quickly. It involves holding back the trigger of the firearm with one hand and using the palm of your other hand to strike the hammer repeatedly.
Does Jane have enough experience to use this fanning technique to rapidly shoot Dave?
The suspect claimed that she shot the victim in self-defense. However, due to the fact that the revolver was single action, so that the hammer needed to be pulled and then the trigger for every shot, this does indicate pre-thought and continuing to shoot the gun until it was empty.
Police don't find any DNA on the murder weapon. They believe it's been wiped down for that very reason.
February 2010, police called Jane Loud back to the station.
I've been working on this thing, Jane, for a long time. Since it happened. We put a lot of pieces together. So I know and you know what you told us that night ain't the truth. You know?
Police charged Jane Loud with first-degree murder.
The warrant's been issued for your arrest. Okay, for murder. You understand that? I told you you're under arrest for murder. You wrote me down. You understand that?
A guilty verdict means a life sentence, and the use of a gun in the murder will double the sentence. Jane faces 50 years to life if she's found guilty.
She took a lot of money from my mom. $1,500 for this or $2,000 for that.
If they convince you, you're never getting out. You'll never hold your son again. You'll never hold your family again.
The stakes for Jane could not be any higher.
Along the Pacific Coast Highway in Oxnard, California, Jane Loud admits to shooting her high school sweetheart. Olympic shot putter Dave Loud. Jane fires all 6 shots in the single-action revolver. Gunshot residue found on clothing, as well as the ballistics evidence gathered from each shot, give police some clues about where Jane is and how Dave is positioned.
Jane Loud may have acted with intent or premeditation. Prosecutors don't know if there's an entirely different motive. And at this point on the mind of the jury, they have to be concerned about reasonable doubt.
Prosecutors offer Jane a plea deal. Plead guilty to a voluntary manslaughter charge.
He offered us voluntary manslaughter 11 years, no gun. And I said, make it 6 years. And he said his office would not do 6 years.
In California, a crime committed using a gun can mean an enhanced sentence of 10 to 25 years.
I get a call from the DA saying, we'll agree to the 6 years if she pleads tomorrow. Okay, 6 years of voluntary manslaughter means 3 years actual time. It's half time. Okay, so it's a 3-year sentence. This is the deal of the century. Okay, I literally celebrate.
That night, Ron gives Jane the good news about the reduced charge.
Jane tells me she doesn't want the deal. She wants to go to trial. She was resolute that she wanted to go to trial.
Jane tells her lawyer she wants to go to trial and be found innocent of any crime on behalf of abused spouses everywhere.
The stakes for Jane could not be any higher.
If they convince you, you're never getting out. You'll never hold your son again. You'll never hold your family again.
Jane refuses the plea deal, and her murder charge goes in front of a jury. Using forensic evidence, gunshot residue, and bullet trajectories, the prosecution tells the jury that Dave Loud is a sitting duck in the side yard.
A damaged lead bullet was found underneath the victim's body, which had threads from both his t-shirt and sweatshirt embedded onto the projectile, as well as fragments from the concrete. The wound was in contact with the clothing and the ground when it exited the body, consistent with the victim being on the ground when he was struck with this projectile.
This evidence doesn't look good for a self-defense case. If he's already laying on the ground when he shot a final time, he's the one who's defenseless.
The victim had wounds to both the right and left side of his body, as well as some of the wounds being from front to back and some from back to front. Some of the wounds were close range, near contact to contact, where others were distant. So this indicates movement on the part of both the victim and the suspect.
And I guess one of them like skipped his ear, and then another one kind of popped his shoulder, and then like that's only two. So all of a sudden it kind of went down, and then she got him in the jaw, and now he's going down. So she's got three left, and he's like on all fours, and he's looking up, and she just kind of boom, boom, boom.
The prosecution suggests that Jane may have a financial motive for killing Dave.
Yeah, they had debt. Yeah, was Dave upside down financially? Of course he was. Was Jane ever going to be poor and homeless? No. Jane never wanted or could want for anything again. They had plenty of money. Her family was always going to take care of her.
Police asked Jane's mother about the family's finances.
You guys kind of kept on talking about a lot of stuff?
I never questioned her when she needed money.
What did she tell you? Why did she need all this money?
Pay bills.
Police discover that Dave's mother is lending them money as well.
You know, Jane had been taking classes at Oxford College so that she was preparing to be, I guess, a preschool teacher. I'm not really sure. It never got explained to me, but she needed money for tuition.
She took a lot of money from my mom. $1,500 for this, or $2,000 for that, and my mom was like, okay, you know what? Didn't ask a question. She just gave it to her. Like, okay, you know what? You need it. Go ahead.
Then, a few months before the shooting, Jane asks Dave's mother for a big loan, $25,000.
There were definitely money issues at play here, but is that enough to suggest that Jane shot Dave for financial gain?
A prosecution witness testifies that Jane stands to collect almost $300,000 in insurance money from Dave's death. The defense presents its evidence to the jury that Jane is systematically beaten, abused, and raped over the 29-year relationship.
Jane outlived the monster. You're going to hear about it. You're going to hear in detail about what he did to her. You're going to hear in detail about how he treated her. You're going to be in detail about how he hurt her. He is not the hero of the Olympics. He is the monster who abused her for 27 years. If you understand domestic violence, you understand the why in this case. The why was that Jane was the domestic violence victim, was trying to save her son's life.
Jane Love takes the stand to testify in her own defense and set the record straight. Olympic medal-winning shot putter Dave Love is shot by his wife Jane, who is charged with first-degree murder. She claims to have done it to end decades of abuse at Dave's hand. But the prosecution suggests that this is no heat-of-the-moment act.
The way Dave is shot gives Jane time to think about her actions, according to the prosecution. They also believe that money was her motive.
Our theory was basically long-term domestic violence, which resulted in PTSD, which resulted in her believing that she had to defend herself that night when he pulled the gun. She was on a stand for 3 or 4 days. It was emotional. It was excruciating.
On the witness stand, Jane says that for 29 years, her husband beats, rapes, and degrades her. Jane says that Dave is the one who takes the money, and she has to borrow $25,000 to repay the school.
The defense shares all of this with the jury and pokes holes in the prosecution's case that this was about money.
Now the defense gives their side of the moments leading up to Dave's shooting.
Jane took her son and some other kids with some other moms to the beach in Oxnard. They had a beach day. And they got back late because the kids were having a good time, and Dave was home. He had been drinking. And he ran out of booze that day. He was mad at Jane for not being there to make him dinner. So around 7 o'clock, she makes him a hamburger. Dave throws the hamburger at Jane, saying it's not good enough, make him another one. He's raging in the house, he's yelling and screaming. He's calling her all kinds of names.
How did that gun get into Jane's hands? Was it in the gun safe? Was it already hidden in the grandfather room? Or did Dave have it and Jane wrestled it away?
The defense says Jane can rapidly shoot the gun in her hand, questioning whether she shoots Dave in the heat of the moment or has time to consider her actions.
The only dispute in the trial was the intent and self-defense and the mental issues of Jane Lau that she had.
In the end, it's all about how Jane gets the gun. It's all about how she uses the gun. It's all about what she does with the gun after she uses it. That helps the jury determine whether there's intent or not.
And while he was looking away from her, from a distance of several feet, she raised that revolver to the back of his head, and she fired that first shot.
They said it was one of the longest trials they've ever had. It was like 11 weeks. It was a long time. It was tough. It was 11 weeks of that stuff, man. That was brutal. Like some days you came out of there and you felt like, okay, that was a great point. You felt good. Other days you just felt like, oh my gosh, this is horrible.
The jury returns their verdict. Jane Loud is guilty of first-degree murder.
They did an outstanding job. They were able to take and decipher all the stuff that was lies and put together what the truth was.
All that mattered was that there were 5 bullets in that guy, 2 in the back of his head, and the jury didn't accept self-defense.
After refusing a plea deal and a 6-year maximum sentence, Jane Loud is sentenced to 25 to life for the murder, as well as a gun enhancement of another 25 years.
I go back to that day she turned down the offer. I was in this conference room, I'm talking to you, sitting at this table to my left with her, and begging her to take it, and her saying no. I failed her by not being able to convince her to take that deal.
Sometimes you feel okay about it. Like the justice system did its job, and it did all that it could do. But, I still don't have a brother. You know what I mean? And that's pretty much bottom line. I mean, I've had people that come up to me just like over the past few years and just say, your brother was just such a good man. Not just because of what he did, it's just because of who he was. I mean, there's so many things that I still wish he was here.